Hello and welcome to the Friday, July 2nd, 2021 Firecracker edition of On Iowa Politics. This week, the never-ending campaign, cheated, on the border, and big money. Hi, I'm James Lynch with the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and with me today are Tom Barton of the Quad City Times. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, James.
Amy Rivers of the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, James.
You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics wherever you find your podcast. First up, the continual campaign.
That continues.
Continues, yes. To be continued. Campaign 2022 and 2024 are bleeding together as GOP A-listers make their way to Iowa to boost the local Republicans who will be on the ballot next year and introduce themselves to folks who might be caucusing ahead of the next presidential election, assuming there is a caucus, of course, and Republicans say they definitely will be first in the nation in 2024. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley was in the state to serve up some red meat at the Republican Party of Iowa's annual Lincoln Day dinner. Then she took the leftovers to the Quad Cities for a fundraiser for freshman U.S. Representative Mariannette Miller Meeks. Tom, I guess her message was that 2nd District Republicans should double down on Miller Meeks. Does that mean she wants freshman Congresswoman to win re-election by at least 12 votes next year?
So I think it speaks to the fact that Miller Meeks is among the most vulnerable House Republicans up for re-election in 2022, facing attacks from both House Democrats eager to wrest back the seat and hold on to or potentially grow the majority in Congress, as well as possible attacks from within her own party for her more moderate stances on certain issues. So Miller Meeks said that she was called a traitor and a rhino, Republican in name only, by a small portion of individuals within the party for joining Democrats and 34 other GOP House members to back legislation to create an independent bipartisan commission to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, largely incited by Trump and his supporters over baseless claims of a stolen election and widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. So Miller Meeks addressed this in the fundraiser and defended her position as support for rank and file Capitol Police who deserve answers and to know the results of why there was a breach of security and failures in leadership, how to remedy and prevent such breakdowns in the future, and what additional support is needed for Capitol law enforcement going forward. She said she felt she felt a commission with equal representation from both parties was, quote, the rational, pragmatic thing to do. But her and Haley's comments suggest maybe some of the Trumpier, more conservative arms of the party may not be overly comfortable with Miller Meeks, who in the last election cycle had to fend off a primary challenge from former Quad Cities and Illinois Republican Congressman Bobby Schilling, who ran to the right of Miller Meeks and raised doubts about her position on abortion as a conservative pro-life lawmaker. So Haley's comments could be seen in some ways as an effort to solidify the party support behind Miller Meeks and discourage a potential primary challenger in this next election cycle, someone who could run at her from the right. It's a competitive district. Democrats, while they lost ground in farm communities and, traditionally reliable factory and Rivertown stronghold, or used to be strongholds for them in Southeast Iowa, they still have strong registration numbers in the district. And while historically the first election after a presidential election favors the party out of power and, cuts in the favor of Republicans, you won't have Trump on the ballot to drive turnout and help Republicans down ballot in this next election cycle. The electorate will likely look more different than it did this last cycle. In even last cycle, Iowa's 2nd District had a razor-thin margin. And Iowa's a red state, even more so since the 2020 election. So I think Haley's remarks may reflect a worry or an effort by national and state party leaders to try and combat a possible lack of enthusiasm among Iowa Republican voters to turn out and help reelect Miller Meeks, who again is more moderate compared to her fellow House GOP members, including Ashley Hinton and Randy Feenstra. And House Democrats have targeted Miller Meeks in the district. They're, again, easy to wrest back the seat they held for 14 years and try and help hold on to their majority. And as Haley put it, they're going to put even more money into trying to defeat Miller Meeks this time.
So Despite Miller Meeks' vulnerability, Tom, where are the Democratic challengers?
Yeah, so I really think that the delay in drawing the congressional districts, drawing the boundaries, has kind of frozen the field, both for Democrats as well as any potential GOP challenger. It should be noted, however, haven't heard at this point that there is or potentially could be a Republican challenger to Miller Meeks. But that's causing a lot of issues and problems, for anybody jumping into this race who isn't a Republican, not knowing how this district is going to be drawn.
Based on Haley's remarks and those by Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton up in deep red Sioux Center, Amy, it appears that Republicans have a sort of a cheat sheet of hot button issues to fire up the base: U.S. versus China, immigration, and Vice President Kamala Harris's tardiness in visiting the border, hostile media, defund the police, and so on and so on. Republicans seem to be loving it. Do these messages have any staying power, and will people still be paying attention 17 months from now when they go to vote?
To these issues, maybe not. I mean, there could obviously be different issues and will be different issues in 17 months. I'm assuming coronavirus 2 will be upon us. Just kidding. I'm hoping it's not. That was a reverse jinx. But in all seriousness, these rallies are modeled after Trump rallies, really, by and large, which are, these, star-studded events, obviously, that, are riling up the base. And so I really think absent Trump's appearance, these candidates have to sort of be that surrogate to him to really get the Republican Party to come out to the rallies and furthermore then to go and vote. But as far as whether that's going to translate into votes in 17 months, it's really going to depend on, factors that are going to happen in like the few weeks and maybe couple months before the election, I would think. I mean, based on what we've seen in the past, the recent past for, the party and where it's going, it's really going to come down to, does Trump support them? Does Trump even run? Is he going to bring them along, or is he going to push them to the side? And I think that's really more important right now than sort of the red meat issues that we're seeing come up.
So I'm going to call on you guys to make a prediction. Who's the first Iowa candidate to have Trump make an ad or make an appearance in Iowa? Reynolds or one of the members of Congress? Miller Meeks, Hinson, Feenstra, I suppose even Chuck Grassley. Do you think it's likely?
I think out of any of them, it's probably going to be Reynolds.
I would think so too. Either Reynolds or, Hinson hasn't run afoul of him. I think Feenstra could be a good candidate. I don't necessarily think maybe Miller Meeks.
Potentially, but yeah, I don't know.
Feenstra probably doesn't need him in that district. I mean, at least as it is today. I mean, because of the overwhelming Republican voter registration advantage. Miller Meeks, maybe she needs to turn out her base. Hinson, it almost seems like it could be a two-edged sword there. In the first district, yeah, it would turn out her base, but at the same time, it may also turn out the Democratic base as well. I mean, it's a pretty competitive district, like the second. So.
Yeah. Well, it's worth noting that Miller Meeks' vote for that January 6th commission, probably turned off Trump and certainly did not sit well with him. He sent out a statement attacking those 35 House Republican members that sided with Democrats and voted for that, calling them, I think he said they were weak or something along those lines. So, yeah, Trump turning out and doing an ad for Miller Meeks, maybe not so much.
Yeah, seems unlikely.
And Grassley, I can't see Grassley either. I mean, if Grassley runs, I just can't see that happening.
Yeah.
So here's the real question about that Tom Cotton visit. Could you beat Grassley in a push-up contest? Do you think you could do it?
Could Trump?
No, right? Oh.
I want to be there for that one.
Right?
Grassley is still fit. He can still, yes. I couldn't beat him in a push-up contest.
Right? I looked at that and, immediately felt incredibly terrible about myself.
Yeah. I might have to fake an injury.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, perhaps more interesting than Haley's comments down in the Quad Cities was Miller Meek's claim, despite winning her fourth attempt at a seat in the U.S. House, that she was cheated. Tom, what is she talking about here, and what evidence does she offer?
Yeah, she didn't really offer any evidence, and doesn't really seem to be any evidence that she was cheated. And in fact, quite the opposite, which I think, I've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast. She seemed to be making the argument that the counting and recounting wasn't done in the same way in every county, and that the Rita Hart campaign pushed for inconsistent recount methods in the few counties she carried, including Scott County, and that those methods couldn't be trusted, that they valued some ballots over others, and raised concerns about the accountability of the process.
So was Senator Roby Smith in the audience? He ran that election bill that didn't do anything about the recount procedures.
Right. Yeah. Roby Smith wasn't there. He wasn't able to make it, according to Miller Meeks. And no, quite the opposite. She praised Roby Smith and the GOP-led Iowa legislature for changes made this year to the state's election laws, calling it, quote, absolutely the right thing to do. And that, quote, we know it was the right thing to do because U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland is now suing the state of Georgia, and make no mistake, they will come after the state of Iowa. So seemingly making the case that if the Democratic Biden administration is going after GOP-led states for claims of restricting voting access, that Iowa Republicans must be doing something right.
Okay. Makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Also, Governor Kim Reynolds is forging ahead with her plan to send Iowa State Patrol troopers to the southern border, and not to the Missouri border, but Mexico. Although unaccompanied refugee children coming across the border are not Iowa's problem, according to the governor, she believes Customs and Border Protection and law enforcement officers from Texas and Arizona and elsewhere need some help. So she's deploying 25 to 30 of the State Patrol's 550 sworn officers over the 4th of July weekend, one of the deadliest times on Iowa roads. Amy, that opened the door for gubernatorial hopeful Representative Ross Smith to offer some criticism of the governor's plan.
Obviously, since he's running for governor, I'm sure he's going to be criticizing all of the plans. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely make a case that, sure, the Iowa State Patrol could be better used during one of the deadliest weekends of, motorists being on the roads and that sort of thing. It's honestly at this point, like, kind of a non-starter, I gotta think, from voters. You're not seeing a ton of, I think, pushback either way from either side, really, like saying, oh yeah, this is good that we're sending Iowa State troopers, or this is really bad that we're sending Iowa State troopers. I get the sense that it's not as big of an issue as some other things. I mean, even on his Twitter account, Ross Smith isn't really like talking it up too much. Like, he's more talking about the charter school law and other things like that. So in the grand scheme of things, I think it'll probably be, assuming that the Iowa State Patrol is not down there for months, I don't think that this is going to be an issue that ends up surfacing in the gubernatorial race long term.
So if they're down there for a week or two, do you expect the governor to go pay a visit?
I wouldn't think so. I think if they're down there through Christmas, yeah, you better go visit them on Thanksgiving for sure.
You don't think she'll take advantage of a photo op of protecting Iowa from the caravan, the hordes of illegal.
Maybe she's trying to work that out. With like a visit from Trump as well, sure. So she can, get that.
I think every other Republican in Iowa has already done that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gone to the border. Yeah.
Gone to the border. Yeah. I mean, Grassley went down there. Miller Meeks went down there. Hinson was down there. I don't know.
I think Feenstra. I think he went.
Feenstra? Okay.
I think so. Yeah. So I think they've all been down there. Maybe Iowa will send a caravan down. One thing
if Ross Smith goes first, that'll really
get her. One thing I find interesting is that the various numbers of state patrol troopers we have. We had a story in the Gazette just a week or so ago where the Department of Public Safety talked about 267 troopers. A trooper I talked to said he thinks the number is under 400 now because they're not at full strength. And now the state is saying they have 550 sworn officers. So that this, 25 or 30 is just a fraction of the personnel. So that number seems to be sort of, I don't know, pick a number,
Shrinking.
any number. Yeah. Well, or growing. And I guess, we kind of joke about whether the governor will go, but really isn't this more about Reynolds' reelection than making the border safer, making Iowa safer?
Yeah, it's at least good optics for, I think, having sent someone at least. I'm kind of confused why maybe we're not sending people besides the state patrol or, asking specifically what their needs are and then, trying to fill those. But maybe that all happened and they only really wanted a couple dozen or she thought, maybe we'll just send a couple dozen and that'll be, enough. But yeah, obviously there's an optics thing to consider.
And still no answer from the Reynolds administration on who's paying for the troopers' deployment, whether Iowa taxpayers are paying for that or it's coming out of this multi-state compact of mutual assistance. Either way, I guess taxpayers somewhere are going to be picking up the tab for this. Speaking of cost and picking up the tab and money, Amy, 1st District Representative Ashley Hinson will be doing her weekly call to reporters this afternoon. Any predictions on what she might want to talk about? Perhaps her fundraising haul this quarter?
Yeah, she raised almost $850,000 and in the last quarter. And keep in mind that this is an off year. It is a Senate campaign, so it's a higher profile race. And she has been, trying to position herself as a more high profile freshman. So that could definitely be helping her cause. But even so, I think for an off year, it's really a big haul and I think speaks to not only her standing in the Senate right now, but the race that she's, undoubtedly going to have to very much defend in a swing district coming up.
Roll call reported that she had about more than 9,000 contributions, averaging $40.
Yep.
Which do you think is more important, the money or the message it sends to potential challengers?
Oh, I think the latter, especially this time of the race. You don't have to necessarily start, buying ads or doing anything with that money. So it's really not that important. I think right now it's positioning herself to say, hey, Abby Finkenauer, or hey, the other contenders that could be coming, Liz could be coming. Just this is my base. This is they're the ones giving me money, and especially the small dollar donations. I think right now, because you can point to that as saying I have a lot of support out there. Right.
Yeah. Apparently, it was a good quarter for incumbents in Iowa. Rumor has it that 3rd District Representative Cindy Axne will report raising about $700,000 in the April, May, June quarter. So the war chests are filling up fast, which will give us plenty to talk about on future editions of On Iowa Politics. If you enjoy the podcast, tell a friend and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast. Send fan mail to podcast@thegazette.com. You can find us on the homepages of the Quad City Times, Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Surf Zombies will take us out. If you know an Iowa band or musician who should be on our show, send us a sound file and subscribe to On Iowa Politics. For Tom, Amy, and our producer, Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the 4th of July.